As I stood there, I was waiting for the nurse to hand me over the baby. And as she did, I looked the baby in its eyes, and I couldn't help but imagine what kind of decision the mother had to make to abandon this poor baby just when she was 3 weeks old. The baby's not mine. I was at an orphanage. But how did I get here? Let's rewind. I had convinced myself I had it all. I graduated with a master's degree. I worked for one of the largest companies in the world. And to put that into perspective, my parents, they never went to school or held down a steady job. My parents, they were born at the beginning of the Vietnam War. So from the very get-go, they were on survival mode. And when the war finally ended, they fled to Hong Kong, where they stayed there for a few years before making their way to the UK, where they raised 4 boys and 1 girl while still operating on survival mode. So just us kids going to primary school was a huge accomplishment in their eyes. So you can only imagine how they felt when we graduated. But at that point of time of graduating, something just didn't feel right. I said to myself, is this it? Where do I go from here? A few months later, I followed the norm. I got myself a job, but truth be told, it just didn't excite me. My parents, bless them, they saw me as a success with more success to come. But at that time, for a very long time, I was broken. Broken dreams, broken hearts, broken inside. And I papered the cracks and I smiled through the pain. And when it became unbearable, only one thing came to mind. I just wanted to die. But something inside my head desperately wanted to know that after I've gone, that I've done something good. And don't we all feel that way? And that led me to volunteering at an orphanage in Vietnam for 2 weeks, just so that I could feel good about myself before I leave. Upon arriving at the orphanage, I honestly did not know what to expect. The director greeted me and I communicated in basic Vietnamese. And she said, "Come, follow me." We went to the first room. She opened the door. And as I looked inside, I must have seen at least 20 newborn babies. The director kept talking, but my thoughts were drowning her words because at this point, I was livid. Not at the orphanage, not at the director, but at the parents. How dare they abandon their children? How dare they not raise their own kids? But a part of me knew that this must have been one of the hardest decisions that the parents had to make. I was torn. I was then taken to another room where it's filled with bedridden children, introduced to a 9-year-old girl called Hien, and she suffered from Agent Orange, so she had this really large head. The director told me that she's been bedridden pretty much her entire life. And as I looked at Hien, watched the sky, it almost felt as if she was waiting for God to call her name. I flew halfway across the world to be here to make a difference. But here I stand, feeling hopeless. How do I take Hien's pain away? The only thing I could do was lean towards her and tell her everything is going to be okay. But what I really meant was, I'm going to pray for a miracle to save her life. I was then taken to the third room, and I could see children running around, smiling, laughing, chasing each other. And I remember the sweet smell of happiness. Wow, so many mixed up emotions under one single roof. And all of a sudden, the kids stopped, looked at me, and said, "Em chào anh Michael," which means, "Hello, Michael." And that melted my heart. After 2 weeks of volunteering at the orphanage, it finally became clear to me that my problems are not as big when compared to these children. They don't have much, yet they're the most happiest human beings that I've ever come across. And that's when I realized that after all this time, I didn't want to die. I just needed a reason to live. These children gave me purpose. Fast forward, I've been fortunate enough to set up a charity to support the underprivileged children in Vietnam, helping them in hospitals, orphanages, temples, and even sending children to school just so that we can make their lives just a little less hard. These rock bottom moments that we experience could either break you or be your breakthrough. But not many of us will experience these rock bottom moments, so we're just living. But are we living with purpose? My purpose is really simple. It's to make an impact on people's lives so that they can become a better version of themselves. So let me ask you, what's your purpose?